Europeans came over here, the French, Italians, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the English, they wore something called buckle shoes. We all remember the buckle shoes. We went over that other.
Mm-hmm.
But our moccasins, they call sandals. Enforce severe punishments. This is reiterated by, nonetheless, I think it was John D. Rockefeller, which is going to tie back into this when we go back to the origin of the hope, or the origin of the blood contract, right? Mm-hmm. And then they say, swear a death oath. The death oath is called the most vile and bloody oath of the papacy. We already went over that. Mm-hmm. But anybody that want to see it, it's online. You can look it up. It's called the most vile and bloody oath of the papacy. That's their death oath. Between ourselves to religiously, that means they're going to use religion, and faithfully, and they're going to use faith-based organizations, not to allow anyone to teach the Moorish children or block us out of the education, who they really were and who their forefathers were, and only allow the Moorish children to be taught that they were truly Negroes, Black people, and colored folks. 200 years from today, the Moorish people would not know their nationality, nor their national name, or their forefathers. Also, they would not know from which land or ancestors that they descended from. Mm-hmm. So all of those means is in there. Now, it's a couple things we need to know of terms. This term called patsy, right? Now, remember, we're talking Machiavellianism. When we're looking at these definitions or these descriptions that AI print out, it's going to tell us the background to the term patsy, which is a person that takes the fall for somebody else's wrongdoing. The person that took the fall is called a patsy, right? And it was tied to several different points of origin. As we see right here, it's the Italian influence. Some believe it derives from the Italian word pazzo, meaning madman, or the Southern Italian word paccio, which is also tied to Pinocchio, meaning fool. After Italian immigration to America, pazzo might have been Americanized as patsy and used to describe a gullible or easily deceived individual. Now we're talking Keefe D. Mm. Now, when they say vaudeville, remember, DC is political satire. Hollywood is actual big screen satire. It's all comedy. It's comedy, it's drama, it's vaudeville. Vaudeville was the plays they used to put on, and the traveling minstrel shows had what they call vaudeville acts, where they did plays and other things. It's another strong possibility traces the term patsy to Patsy Bolivar, a character in a late 19th century vaudeville skit who was always blamed when things went wrong. This character may have become a popular image of someone who takes the fall for others, right? That particular play was based on a true story. It wasn't a true story in and of itself, but it was based on one. The Irish connection. There's also a theory connecting patsy to the Irish-American diminutive to the name Patrick. In this context, patsy was initially used as an underworld adjective for all is well, which evolved into sucker.
Wow.
The Pazzi family. Now, this is between two warring families in Italy. You had the Pazzi family and the Medici family. Prince Niccolo Machiavelli was the advisor from prison to the rising prince named Leonardo di Piero Medici. That means lion of the dog of the Medici clan, which is a Jewish story, the lion and the fox is what they're talking about. The lion and the fox is the quintessential characters of the perfected leader.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when they tell you the story of Machiavelli or Niccolo Machiavelli, he was a part of the fallen order. When the order fell, all of the advisors to the old royal family, the Patsy family, was rounded up, and that's who Niccolo Machiavelli was originally working for when he started before he got locked up. When he got locked up, he assessed all of the princes of the Medici family, and up on his assessment determined that the most likely Medici to become the king would be the prince named Leonardo di Piero Medici. And so he started courting him through letters. He was writing letters back and forth, trying to get his attention so that he can work his way from out of prison by advising the prince that's about to become the king on showing his prowess as an advisor. Smart. So first thing he wrote in was a series of letters. Right, these letters is in a book called "The Discourse" by Niccolo Machiavelli. It's Discourses. Then he asked the prince asked him to give him a treatise on war, and he wrote a book called "On War" by Niccolo Machiavelli, where there's a discussion between the NCO general and the general that worked his way. A commissioned officer who came in through school. So you had one that was educated in warfare and one who had rose the ranks that was going through the actual warring on the battlefield all the way up to the rank of general. He was eventually raised. So that's the art of war. That's his On War. And their discussion is war strategy. So he sent that to him. And then his most prominent work is The Prince. The Prince is instructing Leonardo on what the prince that aspired to be king need to know in order to hold his positions of power as the king. But first he has to become a crown prince capable of seizing the throne by blood and by right, and also outshining all the rest of his adversaries. So the Patsy family is who their major conflict was. So some sources suggest a link to the Patsy family of the 15th century Florence, who were involved in a failed attack on the Medici family and were punished severely. However, this theory is less likely due to the timeline. The word patsy as a fall guy was first recorded much later, around 1900. Right? So, in summary, while the exact origin of patsy is debated, it likely stems from a combination of influence, including the Italian term for the fool or madman, and the popularizer vaudeville character who served as a scapegoat.
Wow. This makes sense now. This connection right here. I needed this piece. Let's go to the other piece.
Okay, now this word is martyr. A martyr, it tells you here. So we know Jesus was a martyr. We know Malcolm was a martyr. Martin was a martyr. Gandhi was a martyr. And there's a whole bunch of other ones. But the word martyr originates from the Greek word martys, meaning witness. In its original context, it referred to a person who gives testimony, often in a legal setting. However, the term evolved to encompass those who suffered death for their faith, particularly in the context of early Christian persecution. Right? So when the Christians was killing people for not betraying what they believed, that person was classified as a martyr. Right? So you have both Christian martyrs and non-Christian martyrs. You have so-called Jewish martyrs who died for the Jewish faith. And then you have Islamic martyrs, like the ones who put on the vest in Kabul. They considered as martyrs for Islam and the freedom of Palestine. right? In the dictionary, it says a person who is killed because of their religious or other beliefs is a martyr. A person who displays an exact or exaggerates their discomfort or distress in order to obtain sympathy or admiration. That's actually a pseudo martyr. There's a person pretending to be the martyr, the second definition.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we wanted to know what these words mean. And this is why. Because the martyr for the American Revolution is the one with what they call first blood power of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
What means by power of sacrifice, meaning that the first blood is the blood required for a sacrifice to be is most functional.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get a drink, Al.
Take a drink. Hey, y'all, hit that like, hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, man. We're about to get lit.
Okay. So let's say the first blood holds the power of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Can be interpreted in various ways, particularly within a religious context, where the shedding of blood often symbolizes sacrifice, atonement, and redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Biblical interpretation. First sacrifice in the Bible. The shedding of blood first appears in the biblical narrative when God provided animal skins to cover Adam and Eve after they sinned. This sacrifice is seen as atonement for their sins and foreshadows the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The power of the blood. Blood is closely linked to life and sacrifice in the Old and New Testament. Leviticus 17:11 states, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls. For it is in the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul."
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's called blood right. See, Jesus' blood sacrifice. This is where they say they martyred Jesus. The blood of Jesus is seen as the ultimate sacrifice for humanity's sins. His sacrifice made once can cleanse all sin, grant redemption, and allow believers to enter God's presence.
Mm-hmm.
Covered in blood.
Mm-hmm.
Let that sink in. I don't know what God they talking about. Sacrifice and atonement. Across different traditions, blood sacrifice often symbolizes the surrender of something precious to appease a higher power or to atone for a wrongdoing.
Mm-hmm.
The shedding of blood representing life has a significant impact on releasing power or achieving redemption. That's real important. The significant impact on releasing power and achieving redemption. So you can use the blood to gain power, and you can also use the blood to redeem the power. Right? Protection and preservation. In some belief systems, blood sacrifice is linked to protection and preservation. For instance, in the Passover story, the blood on doorposts marked the house of the Israelites for deliverance from the plague.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In summary, the phrase first blood holds the power of sacrifice highlights the belief that the initial blood sacrifice holds significant power in terms of atonement, redemption, protection, and the ability to affect change by giving something precious for a greater purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the George Washington conjure is enforced by the blood sacrifice of Crispus Attucks. Now, the origin story, well, before we go into the origin story, the also in the description is the video I did with B-Dale on blood sacrifice, where we go way deeper into blood sacrifice than we going in over here. But we have to know it was the first blood sacrifice that they used to put us in the sleep state to keep us, and they enforced it with harsh punishment, mistreatment, and abuse. And our enemies never stopped murdering us. Even when we stopped fighting them, they still never stopped murdering us. They still never stopped killing us. They still never stopped feeding us to the beast. They even infiltrated our organizations. Now remember, when they infiltrated Garvey didn't have no pale faces in his organization. He had pale faces that he knew, that he spoke to about the conditions of the people. But in his organization, the only people that could infiltrate the UNIA was somebody that looked like us. The same thing go for Noble Drew Ali. The same thing go for Elijah Muhammad. The same thing go for Yahweh bin Yahweh. And I can keep going down the list. But they've been using this pattern of infiltration and subversion. And the origin story goes back not to John D. Rockefeller, but to the wizard. The quintessential wizard is John D., who was this, but the one that was before her. So the ones that carried the weight of the conjure, Rockefellers, right, was also instrumental with advisory to the Queen, Elizabeth. And you got to see everything coming out of the conjure you seen going in the conjure. We just seen it in the mirror effect in a different position, but having the same fundamental function.
Years old when I found out.
John D.
Hold on, no. Okay, hold on. Before you go to this. Okay, so you see in the last video, it told you about John D. Rockefeller's father being called the devil. We see that John D. Rockefeller was one of the founders of the modern system of education.
Right.
Under him, you had two psychologists who worked at different times for the Rockefeller Foundation, who funded a lot of these nefarious psychological training programs. You had Ivan Pavlov, who was a Khazarian from Russia, and then you had B.F. Skinner, right? Who I think he was from Canada, right? So they were the ones instrumental in creating what's called the conditioned response system and the four walls closed method. The four walls closed method is derived from something called a Skinner box. So y'all can look up a Skinner box and see what I'm talking about. He ruined his daughter with a Skinner box. Okay, and Ivan Pavlov was the one who discovered something called conditioned response, but he was under the Bolsheviks. So they had to leak the information out through spy channels to get it over here to the Rockefellers to use in the development of modern education. We are not being educated at school. We are being socially programmed to be self-destructive. In the origin, and the person that dug up all of this from ancient records, name was John D., who became an advisor to Queen Elizabeth way back in the day. He gave her a 200-year program that wasn't implemented until the George Washington Challenge around 1776. And that program was a blood right ritual, right? You're going to hear them talk about something called Enochian magic. The Enochian magic system is an ancient magic system that John D. was exposed to somewhere, that he began to put the pieces together on how to entrance large groups of people using the blood sacrifice. But the rank have to be consistent with the reaction of the people. So this tell you that Crispus Attucks, who they keep claiming was a mixed American, but he wasn't. He was a full-blooded American. Always been here, bloodline ancient.
Right. That's right.
And so the reason why they have to always tell you he was the first person to die in the American Revolution is so that we will be able to identify what's called the sacrifice of the first blood. By identifying that, it tells you how to break the conjure is exposing it to as many people affected by the conjure as possible. It's the only way to break it.
Okay.
And so we go over who John D was, and y'all get to understand the magnitude of all of this sorcery and
connection there with the John Deere, the one that
John was one of the most popular names that they would call us.
Go ahead.
You know he was native because his last name was Deere.
Go ahead.
Well, all of us over here, all of our last names was either tied to our family's profession or our totem animal. The oldest tribes use totem animals to name themselves after. Right. This is why you get people named John Elk, John Deere. You know what I'm saying?
Bear.
Yeah.
Bear. Yeah.
Yeah. All of them come from native bloodlines. They don't come from. That's why they carry that. Now they could be. Some of them could have been passing and integrated into European culture over here and still carry that name because they still carry the blood. Right. You only need one drop of blood. Okay, so that was one. It's a real long one on here. We're not gonna watch, Elder, unless you want to. But it's another. So now, when we talk about first blood, now look, the first person to die in the American Revolution was Crispus Attucks, right? A mixed race man, and I want you to tell you he was a high chief who was killed in the Boston Massacre on March the 5th, 1777. That's what set off the Civil War. He was shot by British soldiers during a confrontation that escalated into the event known as the Boston Massacre. Attucks was a sailor and is now considered the first martyr of the American Revolution.
Right.
So now you see why we went over martyr. Right? Because what was he fighting for? He was fighting to liberate the tribes from the parasites called the British. That's what he was fighting against. The British is in control of your police force. The British is the same as saying the English. We just say that when you say England, you're saying a small part of the British. It consists of 5 islands or 5 pieces of land, right? But when you say English, England is one of the British territories. They 5 land pieces of land territories, right? So you see how it started.